you got the job, okay? You're the new kid on the block. And how did the other presenters, welcome you when you came along?
I think looking back on it, not just for the presenters, but for everyone working in the show, it was quite a strange time. I think everybody knew that really the BBC had no choice but to terminate Richard Bacon's contract. But he was a very, very popular presenter, not just with the viewers, but also with the people who worked on the show, the other presenters and the production staff. A really popular figure. He's a fun character. He's great company. I've met him, many times down the years. So there was, because this was probably, I got the job probably about a month and a half after he'd gone. And there's a little bit of a sense in which people were still kind of mourning his loss. They didn't really want to be having to welcome a new presenter in, but here I was, I've just been given this amazing opportunity. And I think for a time, I'm not saying people were unfriendly, they were, but I could really sense that there was still a lot of people upset by what had happened to Richard, and it weren't quite in the place yet where they were ready to sort of welcome with huge open arms a new presenter, but they knew they needed one because the show's on air 3 times a week. You're making films every week. It's too much work for 3 of them. So I think the presenters were relieved I'd arrived because I'll take on some of the work, but the production staff, and they took a little bit of time to warm up to me, which was difficult because, it's one of those sliding doors moments in life, isn't it? You've been given an opportunity by what's happened, and you've got to take it. You're never going to say no, but it was an unusual time to get it.
Now, you've joined the programme, of course, and we only ever see the finished process on telly, on TV. You all look great, you're all great and friendly. Was there ever any tension behind the scenes where, like, I think I should be doing such and such, or, I should have that job, I'm better at that, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's always a little bit of that because, something I was always determined to do, and that was not let a job like that change me as a person. I didn't want to be seduced by fame or any of the trappings that come with doing a very public job. So that kind of side didn't interest me, and it meant a lot to me when people said, you haven't changed at all, between when you joined the show and when you left. You're still the same Simon. So I always felt it was really important to treat everybody as your equal, whether they're the camera person, the sound man, whoever it is. We're a team. I always used to describe us like we're like a football team. The presenters are the finishers. They're the strikers. They're the ones who, like in a game of football, get the glory. But without all the men behind them in a football team, you're nothing. And it was the same for us. So I was always really conscious of being appreciative of being in a team, but there's always going to be little stressful moments. They'd often come on summer trips because you'd be away filming for 5 weeks in some really amazing locations, but 5 weeks filming in India, which is just incredibly hot and humid, and you're on the go pretty much every day. You don't really get any days off. When people get tired, then people get a bit upset with each other. I remember going on a trip to San Francisco. And Matt Baker, who I worked with for many years, it was me and Matt doing San Francisco, and we did a few independent films, and then we did some filming together. And there was one iconic shot in this film, which was Matt and I driving a red Corvette, soft top with the roof down over the Golden Gate Bridge. Just an amazing moment. And Richard, the director, said Simon's going to be driving, and I only heard later on, because he didn't say this in front of me, that Matt wasn't very happy that he wasn't driving. There's a bit of male testosterone, bit of egos going on, so he wanted to drive. But yeah, you listen, when there's a team of 4 of you, you're always going to get moments like that. But I think the reason why the period I was on it was such a good time to be part of the show is because we were genuinely friends. We didn't just put it on for the cameras at 5 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. We socialised together and are still friends to this day.
Now, you mentioned earlier about your dad, of course, being a vicar, and somebody mentioned to you about they need more Christians in media. When you went into the job, did you have that in your mind as well, to be a Christian in the media, to bring them the gospel message with you?
Yes, it's a good question, because that I found quite difficult at first because there was an awful lot of publicity about me getting the job because of what had come before. I think the media made a lot of the fact that I was a vicar's son, and also that I was a Christian, because they're looking at it and going, you couldn't get a safer bet than going for a vicar's son. Little do they know about many other vicar's sons who haven't gone the same way, but they painted me as this kind of Christian goody two shoes, not going to make the same mistake as Richard Bacon. And I did feel quite a lot of expectation from the UK Christian world, because you get so many emails and letters and requests to visit churches or visit big youth events, and and people saying we're praying for you regularly and all this kind of things, which was lovely. But I'd always be, and some people would write as directly as to say, we really look forward to you sharing your faith on Blue Peter. Now, there were one or two films I did where I did speak about my faith because it fitted in with what we were doing. But, how do you share your faith on a TV program? You can't sort of come on air at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon and go, good afternoon, everyone, welcome to Blue Peter. And just while we're here, let me just tell you, God loves you and he's died for you and he's forgiven your sins. Amen. Right. Later on the program, we've got to make, you'd lose your job. So it was quite hard, that kind of expectation that suddenly we've got this Christian on a high profile show, and lots has been talked about him in the press about the fact he's a Christian, that I did feel a lot of pressure actually, that I was supposed to use this position, but actually I felt being a Christian was more about, as it always should be, about your actions and your words and how you conduct yourself, not whether you open your mouth live on the television and declare God's forgiveness for everybody.
And how did you actually cope with that pressure at the time?
I think I just got better at knowing what to say yes to and what to say no to. You kind of feel, I need to go and do that. And there was definitely a period, George, where I felt I was just, it was another Christian event I was going to that weekend or the next week. And I thought people eventually, they're going to get bored of hearing, of Simon Thomas always popping up at any particularly youth event. So I became much better at going, that's really worth doing. But actually these others, just for my own well-being and actually to manage my time and to have actually some time to yourself, in a show that demands so much of you, I just became good at kind of filtering out what was worth doing, and no offense to them, but wasn't so worth doing. Yeah.
And how did you manage to keep your feet on the ground? As you say, you didn't let the fame get to you. How did you manage to keep your feet on the ground and keep grounded?
Well, I kept the same set of friends. My friends didn't change. They were always very good at keeping me grounded. And I think it's seeing the job for what it is. It's an incredibly privileged job to do, a wonderful job to do, but it's just a TV program at the end of the day. And we're not saving lives. We're just trying to give kids a bit of constructive programming 3 times a week, try and inspire them, try and educate them, entertain them, but we're not lifesavers. So it was seeing it for what it was and actually realizing very early on, I'd say the whole fame angle probably interested me for about 6 months. And after that, I just thought there's something so hollow about it, because you come away from a conversation where someone stopped you in the street and you realize they're not really asking anything about you. It's the fact that you're the guy they see on the telly. And I can see and I know why fame is so seductive, but actually when you get it, it's actually a very empty thing that leaves far more questions than it ever answers.
He's coming. Jesus is coming. I can't wait to hear the trumpet call. He's coming. Jesus is coming. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all.
Especially cricket and football. And so as I grew up, went into the national military, called up. It was a bad day for me because all my buddies missed the call-up. But they all came to the station to see me off for my 9-month military training, doing this, see you in 9. And there was a half a dozen of them. Bless their hearts, they took me in their car there. So that was good. And I'm going, I'll get you when I come home. So, and what happened in the military was, of course, I made the national football team. Now here's my brain. Okay, every time we're not playing football, I'm getting a pass to go home because it was the Brigadier's toy and he just loved me because I scored goals. So here we go. 3 passes every weekend. We weren't playing football. So that was managed too. And when I got out of the army and I'm moving from this kid who never saw his dad, spent all his time playing sports. My mum said to me once, by the way, You bring home the A's, you can play sports. If you don't, I was an A student. Very easy. Came very easy. A student, boom, got a few B's, didn't matter, got enough A's. And so my sporting life was born at that point. It pleased my mum, and I went off and played. I got out of the army, went straight down to my club team, present myself, I'm out, the shortest haircut you've ever seen in your life. I didn't like that at all. And I didn't like anybody telling me where my right foot was. Your left, your right, your left. That's what I was. I couldn't take that. But I accommodated. I didn't feel like spending my time in prison, shining up the floors. And here I am, going through all of this. And 2 weeks after getting out of the army and playing 2 games, I was thrown into the first team professional team. See, professional teams in those days had reserve teams, under 19s, under 16s, under 14s, and under 12s. They were all the youth clubs, the youth teams. A lot of them were tied to the specific professional clubs. And of course, you had a lot of other clubs in the youth ranks that didn't have professional teams. So the team hadn't scored a goal in 5 games. And they had a lot of international players, and they were paying them huge salaries, much more money than was in England, much more. And they've got to get them out from England, Wales, Scotland, you know, all sorts of places, and pay them huge amounts. So they threw in 3 kids. Our coach, our youth manager of the under-19 team went and just said, put these 3 kids in, they'll show them up. At least put them in, because it'll shake up the foreigners. You know, that's how they did it. It took me a long time to figure out what actually happened. And in we went. In 10 seconds, I had my first goal, a 25-yard instep drive that must have been going 100 miles an hour into the upper 90 right side. And I'm coming back going, I'm not celebrating. I got out of the army. I feel good about myself. You know, I survived. And I'm running back going, a goal every 10 seconds equals X amount of money, equals wonderful contract. I'm 18 years old now. Right, I can do this. And so what happens at the end of the game, the 3 kids scored 6 goals. We won 7-1. The team hadn't scored a goal in 5 games. And I got 3 of them. The instep drive, the side footer with the left foot, and the header. And so they play me again. The second game, a very big game, which was between Durban City and Addington. I'm still an amateur. All I'm getting is hamburger money, a few French fries, you know, the chips. You know. I had to change my entire vocabulary when I got to America, by the way. It's French fries and chips. So if you want chips, you're getting these crispy chip things, you know. So I'm sitting there, I'm playing again, getting my hamburger money, which was a couple of rand, and bus money. I hadn't got a car yet. So I go into this game. It's a very big game. We lost 3-2, and I scored 2 goals. So I've got 5 goals in 2 games. An amateur. My only thing my brain didn't hook into was how to manage this amateur to become a pro, to get the money that I needed for the car, the surfboard, all that stuff. You know, that's how regulated everything according to sports growing up. Third game, I played again. I scored another goal, 6 goals in 3 games. I said, I'm home. This contract they're going to give me is going to be big. Very few South Africans, other than the superstar Springboks that were playing in those days, the young ones coming through were just starting to come through. And so the 4th game, I get benched. And I'm going 6 goals, 3 games benched. Yeah. It took me a long time to figure out that they couldn't sit these very expensive international foreign players, and I'm on hamburger money. So paying these guys, they had to be on the field. But as it turned out, in comes a boxing fellow, a promoter who owned Durban City, which is the biggest club in South Africa outside of 1 or 2 others. He knocks on the door. This is after my dad had died. I'll get to that in a few seconds. He knocks on the door. He said, Mrs. Smathurst, this is my mum and I in the flat overlooking the Indian Ocean. He said, can I speak to your son, please? She said, come in, Mr. Elliott. He's the boxing promoter, very well-known gentleman in all of South Africa. And there I am saying, he's got this packet, this shopping packet, old-fashioned shopping packet that was like 3 feet tall and very wide. If anybody's listening and knows that and remembers that, very thick brown paper would carry anything in there. And I'm looking at him. He said, Derek, could you clear the dining room table, please? He's a boxing promoter, remember? And I go, yes, sir. And I pushed it back. That's how we related to everybody. Yes, sir. No, madam. You know, Uncle George, Uncle Bernie, all that kind of stuff. You know, it was never by the first names. And then he pours this huge shopping packet thing all over the dining room table. And I'm looking at very large rand, South African currency, on this table. And back then, the rand was very high. And I'm saying, right. And I look at him, I said, where do you want me to sign? I'm an amateur, I can sign with anybody. And that was my beginning of Durban City.
He's coming. Jesus is
Life Stories.
But I always, whether it be in a school environment, I get to use this Bible verse because there isn't a debate about this Bible verse. And so sometimes I'm in a school setting and I say, I would like to just share this Bible verse. And you hear a deep sigh. But there's a Bible verse that says this: bad company, it corrupts good morals or good habits. Another translation says, and I always tell people this, that your friends, the environment that you're in, the music that you listen to, the things that you watch, okay, will have an impact. I always tell people this: you show me your friends and I can kind of gauge what kind of future you're going to have. You are a product of the environment that you're in. And at the age of 15, I started to knock around with the wrong people. And what was happening, I weren't turning up for games on a Sunday morning. I was going out on a Saturday night. I was drinking, not that I should have been drinking at that age. And so I weren't turning up, and I was going to quit, but I had a really, really good youth team coach and a guy called Kenny Jackett, who pulled me aside one day and said, Bruce, and this is where I get the theme of making the right choices. Kenny just said to me, Bruce, you've got two choices to make. He said, you've got choice A, Watford are going to offer you a scholarship. Back then it was called an apprenticeship. But he said, for you to get this scholarship, he said, you're going to have to leave home. You're going to have to leave your friends. He said, you're going to have to work extremely hard. You're going to have to be dedicated, committed. And he said, if you listen, he says, I think you could become a professional football player. And then he said, you've got the other choice. He said, if you stay with the friends that you're hanging around, you keep doing the things that you're doing, he says, you and I both know basically you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. And here I was at the age of 15/16 with a choice to make. You know, do I stay with my friends? Do I leave? At that time, my mum and dad had just got divorced. I'm a mummy's boy. I love my mum so dearly, and it was a big thing for me to leave home. But I knew in my hearts of hearts that I needed to leave and I needed to go and pursue my dreams. And so I made that choice to leave home at 16. I moved into digs. I moved in with an English family. And so I remember at that time, my parents, they dropped me to my digs, and I remember just staring at the ceiling thinking, I'm never going to last for 2 years. You know, as you can see, I'm Afro-Caribbean. We like rice and peas and chicken. Okay, and so I was like, I'm homesick. I'm missing my mum's food. But I always tell people this, and I really mean it. That is probably one of the best things that could ever have happened to me, because one, I had to grow up. Two, I had to understand a different culture to what I was used to. And it actually helped mature me as an individual and as a person. And so my first year as an apprentice was really difficult. That first 6 months was very challenging. I made a few mistakes. At Christmas, we had a week off and I was due to go back and I didn't turn up. And I had a bit of a bad attitude, and then I went back, I got disciplined, and then I had to humble myself greatly. But in my second year, as an apprentice, things really started to go well, and I ended up making my debut for Watford's professional team at the age of 18. I would have been 17 at the time, sorry. And so because I'd made my debut with the professional team, I kind of had a little bit of an idea that possibly I might be offered a professional contract, which I did. And so the following year, I got offered a pro. I signed pro. I came back for my first professional season, and what had happened, my youth team manager, he got promoted from being a youth team manager to the first team coach. And so when we went back for training, for pre-season training, I went on tour with the first team, and so I was kind of like the young pro who was carrying all the older pros' boots, and I was the luggage boy. But what my coach wanted to do, he just wanted me to be in that environment of being around the professionals. And remember I said, okay, the company that you put yourself in, you become a product of the environment that you're in. And so what Kenny wanted to do for me, he wanted me in that environment around senior pros where I could learn and be in that atmosphere of what it would be like to be a professional footballer. But what happened, we came back from tour, and the season had started and a player got injured and I got chucked in the deep end. They put me in, I made my full debut, I scored a goal on my debut, and then I went on to play about 7 or 8 consecutive games in a row, and all of a sudden there was quite a lot of media attention around this young boy called Bruce Dyer. And I remember there was a newspaper article from a manager called Barry Fry from Birmingham City, and he made a statement in the Sun newspaper, it was the Sun or the News of the World, that he said if I had £1 million I would sign the boy Dyer. And so there was a lot of speculation surrounding me. You know, I was just a young 18-year-old loving football. All I ever dreamt about doing was becoming a professional football player. And one day on my day off on a Wednesday, I was driving my little Fiesta car that had about 185,000 miles on the clock. It used to rattle, and I had this Motorola phone that I'd won from a man of a match, and it rung, and it was the manager of Watford to say, listen Bruce, a deal's been agreed, and it's a record transfer fee. Expect a phone call from Crystal Palace. And so the chairman of Crystal Palace phoned me. And we had a meeting the following day, which I ended up signing for Crystal Palace. And that actual signing, I became the first teenager to be sold for over £1 million, and when I was 18. And it was a phenomenal achievement. I mean, my life just got turned upside down. I went from just being this ordinary kid, an apprentice, to all of a sudden a record transfer fee, and in the space of 3 months my life just got turned upside down in a real powerful way. So it would have been March 1994, I signed from Watford to Crystal Palace. Then the following month, which would have been April, we got promoted champions, so we got crowned champions at Crystal Palace. So I knew the following season I was going to be playing at Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, you know, all the Premier League big teams. For footballers, for most professional footballers, their dream ticket is to get to the Premier League. And here I am, an 18-year-old, knowing we've just got crowned champions, and I know next season that I'm going to be, we used to call it the Promised Land, the Premier League, the Promised Land. So
He's coming. Jesus is coming. I can't wait to hear the trumpet call. He's coming. Jesus is coming, and when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all.